so tech earnings, you guys on deck. Tesla leading the charge after the bell. Shares are rising, as you can see, maybe about 4% or so today, but investors still expecting a pretty dim report. They are estimating the weakest quarter since 2021. The stock, though, down more than 40% from its record back in December. And yesterday alone, the share decline chopped off $10 billion from Elon Musk's net worth. Now, Tesla investors are hoping for some big updates on the long-awaited robo-taxis, maybe Optimus, and maybe, of course, whether Elon Musk, where he stands when it comes to his work with DOGE. Kenny, I want to start with you because to me, it is with Tesla, the earnings call, what to expect. What are you waiting for? What does this stock need?
So listen, I actually think it's telling you, right? It's already down 40%. They've really taken out, I think, all the negative news. Unless he comes out with a report that nobody's expecting, like a really negative report, I actually think that the worst of this is over. Look, Tesla's more than just an auto stock, right? You've named it. It's more of a technology name. There's a lot of other plays here. So I think as long as he focuses on the future guidance, and it might be difficult, but as long as he's able to talk about kind of where he thinks and what he thinks tariffs are going to do or not do to Tesla, right? I don't think speaking about DOGE, honestly, is appropriate at a Tesla. I don't think why he should be speaking about DOGE at a Tesla earnings report.
But what about his role at DOGE?
Well,
because you have analysts who say step aside and come and be a CEO.
Okay, so that point. But I thought, he shouldn't be talking about necessarily what's going on. But if he wants to be challenged about, either choose between us or them, I guess that's a decent part of the conversation, but I fully expect actually that he's already kind of made that decision to step away from DOGE.
Jackie, well, that's an interesting point. We'll think about that. You think he's stepping away from DOGE?
I think a couple of weeks ago he said he was going to take a lesser role in DOGE. I think he wants to concentrate.
Well, he's got his 130-day kind of deadline anyway.
Yeah, right.
So it's sort of naturally happening.
Jackie, Morgan Stanley was writing on Tesla today, reiterating they're overweight, despite what we've seen, a stock down more than 40% this year alone. Adam Jonas is the analyst over there, saying that he thinks the company will reiterate their timing of their Cybercab launch in mid-year in Austin. And again, looking for this bridge, he thinks 2025 is the year from the bridge of the old Tesla, a car with a steering wheel, to the new Tesla, a robo-taxi, fully self-driving, Optimus, a humanoid robot. I think that's the question when you think about what is the future of this company.
Absolutely, and I think Elon Musk should focus on that stuff on the call today as the visionary behind Tesla. He's an innovator. He should be talking about the future. We do know that he's going to go back to the company. I hope he doesn't make today, as Charlie was reporting yesterday, about sort of talking about the timing of his departure, because to me, they're two totally separate things, and they should be kept separate. Right. He can always come out later and say, my 130 days is going to be up in X amount of days, and I'm ready to step aside, and that will be good for the stock, but I don't think you should bring it into sort of, someone may ask a question about it, and he may be backed into a corner, but I want to hear about Tesla, the company, what's next, why I should be investing in it, and not worried about the loss in price right now.
Why you should be excited about those. You like the robo-taxis.
I do like them.
I do know, so you want to hear more about that.
So awesome.
Some people
the technology,
I don't know about.
So cool.
I don't know about
Have you ever been in one?
I've been in a Waymo, blew me away.
Yeah.
You can sit there. You don't have to talk to the driver. Continue.
What's wrong? What's wrong with talking to the driver occasionally?
There's nothing.
I like those conversations. Okay, look. There's some people saying 2025 is kind of a throwaway year for Tesla. And maybe that's true. What they're going to, if they make some big promises today, I think they're going to be about things that are more a reality for 2026 and beyond anyway. So I'm sort of sympathetic to that. I don't think he has to come in there and say, I'm done with DOGE, DOGE is over. But all he has to say is, I'm refocusing on Tesla.
To Jackie's point, she wants to hear, tell me about the future. Tell me why I need to put my money.
And you said why, and you said the word why, but I think actually the letter Y really matters for Tesla because they're kind of banking on the Model Y being like their next leg of the low-cost deal.
Right.
I don't think that does it. I think their lineup is stale, and I think what they're offering on the... I know they're more than an auto company. I think it's stale, and so that's even more reason... Teslas are great cars, but I'm just saying to you that they need something more than the Model Y is going to be cheap. I hope that Elon can put on the table some really credible new things call me old school, on the cars with steering wheel front.
No, that's old Tesla, Brian.
They
You're way
need
behind.
something on the cars with steering wheel front. They just do.
Okay,
because
I'm
that's what
not
people
buying a
drive.
car without a steering wheel. Sorry, I'm not buying a
Really?
car.
That's what I'm talking
absolutely
about.
not buying a
Kenny's
car
out
without
there. There's
Live
Kenny's
a little,
out.
Kenny.
I'm too close to the end. No, I'm not buying a car without a steering wheel.
Lydia, I wanted to get your thoughts on some breaking news as well, because we're getting some shocking new video out of New York City. So you can see two people defacing a Tesla showroom with spray paint in downtown Manhattan in bright red paint. They've now tagged the windows with the words DOGE, crossed out, quote, no unelected leaders, we do not consent, and F DOGE. This is a family-friendly program, so I will not be saying that word on air. But Lydia, this goes to that question. Is this is a man who's being targeted for the political ambitions, not as a CEO. And I think you have some thoughts, too, on how we think about DOGE and who is Elon Musk.
You know, as I'm watching this video right here with the no unelected officials, does that mean that they would join the classes of investors that would really cheer if you just kind of pivoted back fully to focusing just on Tesla and his private brand? I mean, maybe so. This type of behavior is just, I think we've seen a bit too much of it. I think it's time to refocus on what's really important, and defacing private property, destroying property, intimidating people, hurling Molotov cocktails at, dealerships is just inappropriate. Pam Bondi's coming after all of you, so you better just stop it and start acting right like you got a brain. It's over. With respect to, Elon Musk and the earnings call, I'm not sure how much he would say about DOGE and his involvement. I think Brian and Jackie and Kenny all made the points that he's already signaled that his time at DOGE is probably coming to an end in the not too distant future. But I actually wonder if there's a reason to hope that he is not kind of turning his back on DOGE totally. He started this project with the goal of eliminating trillions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. And as we know, they've not really come close to that strike point. It's far less that they've eliminated. I think it's like 150 to 160 billion.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's more work to be done. My question is, how are they going to continue to operate without Elon Musk at the helm? And what type of? I'm looking at. I know that there are a lot of questions about his involvement with Tesla. My question is, what is his involvement with DOGE going to be? I think there are both sides of that.
Kenny, Brian had a good point. He said he thinks that this could be a throwaway year. I would argue people think Tesla, the stock, can't afford to have a throwaway year. We have been, as shareholders, patient. And do you think investors, shareholders are getting fed up to the point where they're done being patient and no, we can't afford a throwaway year when Waymo's doing what Tesla can't yet quite do?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a throwaway year. I'm in the opposite camp. I actually think that he's going to come out and he's going to talk bullish about the future, to Jackie's point. He's going to talk about what the future holds. And I think Tesla, it's very cultish, right? Tesla owners are very cultish.
Yeah.
But I think they're all in. I think they're still all in. I mean, the people that got out because they were disgusted. Maybe they were anti-DOGE, and so they would, instead of going out and destroying, they just sold the stock and said, I'm out. But I think the real Tesla owners are going to look at this as an opportunity. Look, the stock is on sale. It's down 40%. Right? And I think it's going to be very exciting this afternoon.
When a shirt's on sale, Jackie and I buy it for 44%.
Hello, I keep using that. When Bluebees puts it on sale, you run and buy 3 of them, because how can you leave them on the shelf?
But also, he is a master at being able to sort of teach and then step away a little bit. I think what's happening at Tesla may be a little bit of different because of the environment, to your point. The focus not so much being on EVs under this administration, but also some of the hatred towards Elon Musk personally. What he does is he trains his team. The company is still functioning quite well. And Lydia, to the point that you brought up about DOGE, I think that was when he sat down with Bret Baier and he had some of his colleagues with him. I think they're putting a system in place, and he's going to say, I can step away from this. They're going to continue to carry out the work, and they will execute the vision because we've set up the foundation.
He just can't win. Like, if he cuts too much from the government, then he's a bad guy. And if he cuts too little, he hasn't done enough. There are some guys in this world who will never get a chance to win because the media is so arrayed against them. And he's one of them now. Right. Yeah. So, whatever you think he is doing, the fact that in 3 months he's got $155 billion out of the federal government, I'd say it's pretty dang good.
Right.